Welcome everybody. This is our MedMasters community mastermind. It is used to be the link. It's the same link that used to be the EBU mastermind. So we've just converted it into an open community to anybody and everybody who would like to come and collaborate, bring their questions, bring their ideas, bring their feedback, and share with each other as well. So I'm just the host here. I don't intend to run the show, so to speak, and it's not all about me and what my knowledge may be or anything else. But we do have um, a lot of connection with a lot of things and a lot of people. So I feel like I can be that kind of networker for you in some ways, and pull people together so we can build our community. So I do have some things in agenda, so to speak, some announcements, some topics. We get questions, hundreds of them every single day. And so I thought if depending on how this goes, I can definitely share a lot of that. As I was mentioning really early on before many of you were here, Procaine has been a big topic in not just with MedMasters, but there's a couple conferences coming up and people are really getting into the stellate injections. It's so crazy. A year ago, like I was at a training and it was all hush hush. Yes, we do it, but we're not going to teach you how to do it. We don't even talk about it because our results are so profound. We don't know what it means. And now it's like I'm seeing it even in some of your marketing from some of you practitioners that you brought it into your practice and doing it. So, and Procaine is not always the medication used for neural therapy, or definitely not the stellate, historically as well. So, anyway, there's some connections there. So we've had a lot of questions on that. I wanted to, go over that as well. Hi, Misty. Thanks for being here. As mentioned, this is a Q&A, so to speak, right? This is an open forum, this community. If you came in prepared with any questions that you might have, and they could be about anything IV, they could be about ozone, they could be about equipment, they could be about marketing, they could be about, I hope you don't mind this, Sienna, but I was just talking to Sienna about relationships and referral relationships. When you've got other people in the community, or how do you get other people in the community to refer to you, and what does that relationship look like? So this could be just super broad. And again, I will give you what I know and share with you connections I might have or referrals I might have. But I would love it if we even had a conversation here. I don't open it up so we can hear each other speak because there's always background and challenges there, but use the chat feature. Until there are more of those questions, like I say, I do have many things that are on my mind that I wanted to bring up, and I'll start with some of the announcements first. Where do I start? I wondered how many of you know about this. If you've been to any ozone conferences, it's probably the only place that you would have known about this a little bit. Although Frontiers in Ozone with Mark Weisner, they've done their marketing for their conference coming up. Might even be this weekend. It's in South Carolina. But there is an LA filmmaker who is going to going to make an ozone movie documentary. It's actually called the O3 movie so far. Maybe you've heard of it. If you had, that's fine. I talked to him for a couple hours last week just to find out what he needs, find out what his goals are. Really fascinating. He wants to make a global representation of ozone in medicine. There is a bit of a trailer right now, and you can find that. I can share links to eventually. But just O3 movie trailer. The filmmaker is Luciano. What's his last name? Anyway, you can search it up and you can find it, but it's interesting. So he wants to bring global awareness and have global representation of ozone in medicine. So he's been meeting all over the world with different ozone providers and practitioners. The trailer has Robert Rowan in it so far, I think exclusively. And I think there's a lot of good that could be done there. And so you can watch for, I think we'll put it in our newsletter as soon as we can. We'll start sending out a few messages on it, but they are looking for donations and funding. He wants to keep it funded to keep private interests or other interests out of it. He's got experience with Netflix and Hulu, etc., but he doesn't want to involve them because of course, then they dictate some of the a lot of it. So they are looking for funding, and so there will be that. And they're also looking for practitioners or experts or patients who have compelling stories, compelling outcomes, compelling, if you feel that you're one of those providers that could contribute to the awareness and education to the public on ozone in medicine and all types of medicine. They haven't really laid out the plan yet. They're still gathering research as to who and how and all of that. So I just told him I would announce it to the community because you might be one of those people. Again, I'm going to share a really cool case study today that would be one of those stories that would be interesting to put on there. So anyway, we'll be sending out some stuff on that. Maybe you've heard of it already, but it is called the O3 movie. His last name will come to me. His first name is Luciano. And again, he's an LA filmmaker. He's done a lot of things. So it's very cool for our industry, very cool for us as providers. It's a balance, right? How much awareness do you want to create? We definitely want to keep it research heavy. We definitely want to keep it scientific. We definitely want to keep it, I would say the industry just wants to represent it well, right? So again, if you've got anything to contribute there, let me know. The next thing is I'm speaking actually at AVA, which is the American IV Association, in October. I think I'm going to be presenting on ozone and UV to their group. So a lot of you will already know the information. It's not about me presenting it. I am the only medical presenter there, though. If you're not familiar with AVA, they're an association that stays completely focused on compliance and regulation in IV specifics. They're fantastic. If we've had Jeff Cohen on, he's an attorney that works with them, represents them, speaks for them. He's amazing. I really love him. He knows everything that we do. He can represent people from all over the country. He's a great resource. His presentations are great. Anyway, he's affiliated with them, but they are offering this free. The event I'm speaking at is October 18th. It's 9 to noon Eastern time. So it might be in the middle of your practice, but at the same time, it's free. If you register, I think it's recorded and you can get access to it. But if you have any challenges, concerns with any regulations, again, compliance, and I don't mean on the medical side, I mean on the legal, technical, pharmacy law, nursing, medical law, state law, all of those aspects of it, that's what they focus in. They just had their annual event, which is, they're getting a little bit more medical. It's what is it? Jive, I think. I think I got that wrong, but it'll come to me too. Anyway, they do have that conference, but this is different. They call it a media day. So we've sent some of those announcements out. If you want to go find them, their link isn't that easy to find because it's just a Google Meet. But again, it's free. They have 3 hours of presentations on the legal side. So wanted to make you aware of that. And their group is just really great. They do have membership opportunities and they do provide a ton of information and content and connections. So they're a great one also. All right, I have had a lot of questions on our stuff in terms of, am I a member? And what do I have access to? So just want to clarify that there is a lot of stuff that we give for free. You're one of our members if you're here, right? If we're talking to you, you're one of our members. But in terms of access to our products, to most of the products, it is a paid membership. So if you're not paying monthly, then you're not a member that's going to get access to everything. And understand that that's a financial commitment, although you can cancel anytime. But we have had, I think I got at least 10 questions about it today. So just wanted to throw that out there also. There's a lot of free stuff. We have free resources, some free videos, the newsletter, the events like this. These are all free to all of our members, but the paid membership is different. And you can always purchase products separately from our store. But if you're a paid member, then you get access to that all the time. We added close to 100 sheets, products, videos last month or over the month of September. If you're a member, you just automatically get access to that. You don't have to pay extra for like our Procaine bundle or our methylene blue bundle. So it's that type of setup. You can go to medmasters.org, go to the membership page. You can see there's a place to submit for free materials. That's if you're new to us. And then there's a membership side. So again, just wanted to clarify that. All right, I am gonna share this case study. Still no questions from you guys. You're gonna make me talk the whole time. That would be boring for you. We'll be quick if there's no questions here. But I wanted to share this case story or case study. I got to, oh, Lexi, so if you can't submit a question, we'll just go to the chat. Do you guys see the chat at the bottom and just write your question in there if that's okay? You can make it private and just send it to me as the host if you prefer that. Well, I can, if you raise your hand, I can allow you to talk like I am with Lexi, so we could submit questions that way. Do you want to try that, Lexi?
Yeah, I actually have a couple questions.
Are you going to
So
stump me?
no. I think these are actually really good in that, you got to do some travel with me to do some procaine, which was so fun. One of the things that I have been very cautious of on the marketing and social media side, as you know, I love to do a lot of that, I think we as practitioners need to be really careful on how we say these procedures. So a lot of times you'll notice I'll say like neural therapy, but I try not to market things like the stellate, only because you're going to have some maybe medical specialists, i.e., like maybe anesthesia, who feel some type of way that it should be done like under imaging or it should only be done by an anesthesiologist. And so to avoid some of that like negativity, I think we as practitioners need to be really careful on how we say it. So a lot of times when I'm doing my consult, I'll say it's an infiltration of procaine. I try not to say the word block.
That's awesome. That's really good. Are you even saying procaine, or are you saying just neural therapy and maybe some of the conditions that would be associated with the service that you have?
Yeah, so I actually do say procaine, and a lot of times when you see me market it on social media or on podcasts, I'll say neural therapy, and then that's kind of like the segue to it. And then when they're in the clinic and I'm doing my consult, I will go into like how procaine is different from lidocaine, and kind of talk about that autonomic nervous system. And so I go more into detail when they're in the consult room. But I think as this gets more popular, just like with peptides, right? Like when peptides came out and when people would say thymosin alpha 1 treats COVID, like don't ever say that. And then it like, more people were just like under the radar. So I think we just need to be really careful on how we market these services online, especially to maybe people who don't really agree with what we do.
I think that's great. I think we always need to be cognizant of that, but your insight and also just some of the suggestions are great. Marketing was a thing I was going to talk about quite a bit, just like how to do this. And sometimes it is in the language though. And I love that you're not hesitant to not market it. You're just careful about how you do it.
Right. And I think let patient testimonials speak for themselves. And I think that is a way better marketing tool than any education piece that I can give them.
So once they're in the office, do you have any other, again, like inhibitions or things that you're not saying? I mean,
Yeah,
at that point, you really have to tell
I
them
would
what it is and what they're
yeah,
doing, right?
I would say the only thing I really don't ever say is block. Like we're not blocking anything. We're infiltrating. And again, my mentor is Suzanne. And so when she was in my office and trained all my staff with me, we were very clear that this is a procaine infiltration. Because when you talk about blocking, like, do you have a crash cart? Do you have an ambu? Do you have code drugs? Like, you just want to be really cognizant of the legal, stuff that you could potentially get into and scope of practice.
Um, I don't know if you were able, I can't remember if I saw you on when she was speaking with us last week, but she did mention like the historical stellate block is not actually what you're doing. Like you're not
Yeah.
trying to block
Yeah.
it, you're actually trying to open things up and get it to reset. Um,
Yes. Yeah. And the
so
other thing is too, is there is a study that showed like more adverse events when it was actually under imaging versus when it was done off of like landmarks and palpation. So
yes.
that is typically going to be my response is, well, actually studies show that if you know your anatomy and you're palpating, the outcomes are actually better.
Well, and she also, and we know this too, talked about like there are other practitioners using things besides Procaine for it,
Mhm.
and they run a much higher risk as well.
Yeah, the half-life of Procaine is super quick, and, the doses that we're using are not even close to where toxicity could be. So, I think just being mindful of those things as practitioners when you add it in.
Yeah, thanks. And I saw that you're doing some work on consent forms and patient education stuff too. You guys are gonna hear it from me day in and day out. Like I'm just so high on this horse of creating a good process and again, standard of care for everything that you do. But this is another one of those things, like bring it on board. We think it's great. In fact, while you're here, Lexi, if you could think of like your number one coolest case recently with Procaine, but you know, you do need to have your SOPs in place. You need to have documentation of those processes, procedures, dosages that you're using, charting for every patient, making sure that the patient has proper informed consent because ultimately I'll say this, I believe that every person can choose what they do with their body as long as they're well informed and they sign to that notion. And that's what you want as providers also. So there's, I just don't get lazy on that side of things either. I think Lexi's saying don't get lazy on the marketing side and get too loose with your words there, but also make sure that in your office things are in place and patients know their expectations. I really focused on this when we were talking about it with Suzanne was like Procaine has instant effects. It's not something, it's not like most other IVs where they may or may not feel anything after they're done with an IV and for days to come. Like Procaine, I would say 9.8 out of 10 times they're going to feel something in the office. And that is kind of like an anesthesia. There's a disassociation. There's almost like a high feeling. You can feel lightheaded. You can like you feel heavy. You feel like your reaction time is maybe not as quick. Like there's all these things and it doesn't last very long. There's also the emotional component. There's all these things. So just I think informed consent and the education, like set the expectations up correctly for the patient with any Procaine or neural therapy that you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're doing it sub-Q, if you're doing it, you know, intravascularly, or you're doing IVs, or they're going to feel it. So it's something to monitor those patients, make sure that they're in operating condition before they leave the office, and obviously setting them up for that success before you even start and getting their John Hancock. So, Lexi, did you think of your most
Yeah.
favorite
Yeah,
response?
actually I did. So back to the point about, anesthesia, this is definitely within their scope of practice. So I had a member of my training academy. She was there for a 2-day shadow and she saw I don't even know how many stellates, celiac, inferior epigastric, or the pelvic or the Frankenhauser, whatever you want to call it, Kim, because I know you got like 20 names for it. We do it all. We do it in aesthetics, but what she said is a week prior to her coming to see me for a shadow, her anesthesiologist buddy who does neurotherapy in Georgia had given her a stellate under imaging and had because I'm so sorry, she had anosmia for 3 years post COVID. So she had tried all kinds of things like retraining her brain, smell training, steroids, all kinds of different things, and nothing worked. 3 years. And so she had gotten a stellate under imaging with Procaine by this anesthesiologist. And then he had injected a couple quaddles in the sinus area. And so she'd been with me the whole day. She'd seen a ton of stellate stellate infiltrations and celiacs. And at the end of the day, she had said, have you ever heard of it treating anosmia? And I said, I've heard of it. I've never actually treated it. And she said, would you be willing to inject me? And I said, I can. And so I pulled out my book and we had gone over it in training. But what's interesting is we inject it very similar as if I'm doing like like a static injection. So like I know the anatomy, I know where the scary areas are intraorbital foramen, and I know to aspirate. And so I basically treated her with about 4 milliliters of 1% Procaine throughout her frontal and her maxillary sinuses. And immediately she could smell. Immediately. And she started crying, and she could not believe that that little bit of Procaine gave her smell back. The best part is she called her anesthesiologist friend, and she was still in Indy. And she told him, and he had said to her, yeah, it probably finally kicked in. And she was like, you mean to tell me a week later, at the exact same moment that she had injected my sinuses with Procaine, it just started to work? And again, he did the stellate under imaging, and he's like, nah, you're probably right. It's probably what she did. And then the other thing that she said is that when she had the stellate herself, she did not have any of those calming feelings.
Oh,
And that she had some like left arm numbness, which, having done this now for a couple months, I don't think he was maybe in the right spot, to be honest with you. If you're just having, and she had no Horner's response, nothing. So I just thought it was really interesting. It's, to my point is that I think, I think if you have imaging, great, but I think just the dexterity of where you're feeling, C5, C6, I think that is really important to know your anatomy, and it's a feel. And I think this was such a great example of, thinking outside the box. And here she had tried all these things and just a little bit of Procaine, and she still smells. Like, I talk to her almost every day and she's still smelling. So
so
it was so cool. Smell and taste came back.
that's great. Thank you. I see the Dr. Smiegel's on here too. You guys heard him speak at our EBU Mastermind a couple of months ago. He talked a little bit about the stellate. He was talking mostly about EBU. That was our focus at the time. But Dr. Smiegel, if you have any comment, all I know how to do is if you raise your hand, I can turn you on to be able to speak. So if I could even figure that out. What if I unmute Lexi? And then I know, like, Alan, didn't you raise your hand? Anybody else who's raising their hand? You know how to do that I'm reading all these instructions on how to turn on the chat and it's not allowing me to do it. So you have to raise your hand again and then I can unmute you, or maybe it says everybody's unmuted, but it worked for Lexi. Ah, there we go. Allow to talk. Alan, the floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much. And this has been really insightful. This is the first time I've joined, and I thought it would be ozone related, but this is even better because I do neural therapy in my practice as well. So this has been great to hear. And I'm curious, Lexi, if your malpractice, since this does seem to be kind of covering a lot of bases here. If your malpractice, covers your neural therapy. I know as a naturopathic physician in Arizona, when I was asking them specifically about different services and procedures, they said neural therapy, despite it being under our scope, was not covered. And so it's kind of unfortunate. I still use it in practice. And some mentors have said, even though it's not exactly the same as trigger point, in some cases, it could be used or it could be documented like that. I don't like that, but I'm wondering if that's something that is the same for you. Maybe it's different, not being a naturopathic doctor, or I'm not sure about each of your guys' background, but would love to hear if you have any insight on that.
So with our malpractice, I'd have to double check, but when we had our training, we did submit our like continuing education certification with neurotherapy. And we do a lot of, I'm sure as you do, a lot of very integrative things. So I know we do carry the highest level of malpractice that you can. I'd have to see exactly how the verbiage was done with our attorneys. And I can let you know exactly how that was phrased.
Yeah, I would love to hear that. And I'm sure with submitting the continuing education, that's definitely supportive and justifying, coverage for that. And I know doing some of these procedures, it is helpful to carry like the highest coverage, which I know we do for our practice.
Yeah. We also do a lot of aesthetics. So we inject I inject faces, heads, vaginas, like everything. There's not one thing I don't inject. And so because of all of that, we do carry like, advanced for the aesthetic procedures. We have lasers and things like that. So I can double check, see how it's like phrased, but and let you know.
That would be fantastic. I can drop my email unless you guys already have it from the webinar in the chat.
Will you
But
try that, Ellen?
yeah,
Because I think I may have just been able to turn it on. Try
Oh,
the
there
chat.
it is. It
Does it
worked.
work?
I do see it now. Yep. It wasn't showing up before, but you did it.
This is a great question. This is a question we get all the time, whether it's ozone or procaine or methylene blue or whatever. And like Lexi said, most of you are doing a variety of these types of services. I do have a small list of malpractice providers that I know work in our space. That said, I think it's also what Lexi alluded to is that you can always get malpractice to cover a lot of things. You just often have to pay for it. You have to purchase the highest degree of it. And so I mentioned it last webinar too, like I've got a small list that it's not a ton of people, but it's malpractice companies that I know some of our providers use. And so I know that they will cover it. I hear though, oh yeah, but it's going to make my malpractice go up by 2x, 3x. Yeah. Because you're doing things that are a little bit different. And I think it's also good to hear though that these are things that get great outcomes. They're things that really help people. They're really safe. So you're going to get business for them. You're going to get repeat business for doing them. I think you'll find ways to pay for that extra cost of malpractice. So yeah, there's always a balance there. All right. Anybody else? We had some raise of hands or it looks like the chat's working. Glad you joined us, Alan.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for answering that, ladies. Yeah, very insightful.
Did you end up with an ozone question?
Um,
We could talk about ozone all day.
I do. I actually do.
Do
Ladies, it
you
would
do
be
ozone at this point?
we do. Yep. Right now,
Okay.
we do ozone with UVBI. We just do MAH at our clinic, and we'll do about 120 mLs of blood. Maybe it's a lower dose ozone. I believe we'll do maybe it's a bit depends on the patient if they've had it before, but we'll usually do like say 70 gamma and 120 cc's of ozone with the UVBI. But I inherited, and that's with the 12-inch UVBI machines. But I inherited a Zotzman from my father that I actually remember in med school helping him import from Germany. And we do not use that. And I have another provider who was researching into it, and he said, hey, this is actually designed to do a 10 pass. And it's not something we're doing in practice. And so that's what I've been wanting to research more on and find out if this Zotzman unit that we have can be used for a 10 pass system and what that would entail if you guys would agree that it's worth the like looking into and purchasing those materials over the MAH with UVBI.
Great question. If you guys have any comments on that, write them into the chat. It's a great question. It would take me a few minutes to answer. I'm a big fan of Zotzman and their 10 pass devices. They're phenomenal ozone machines. They're so well made. And in theory, or what they talk about is it's a hyperbaric ozone. So they do talk about it being different than just ozone as a bolus of gas into the blood bag or many other ways that you would use it. What does hyperbaric mean? Ozone under pressure, does it actually change it? I've had so many different perspectives on that. I will say though that the same company that built your 12-inch, light device, I worked for them. I think everybody knows that. I worked with them prior to working for them and helped in that process of developing what they call their high dose. And it was in response to the 10 pass. So it wasn't that we thought it would, could do the same thing. It's not the exact same thing. It's not under pressure. But this idea of 10 passes of drawing 200 mils of blood, ozonating it with 200 mils of 70 gamma ozone and returning it. And you could do that 3 times, 5 times, 10 times. I've seen a 40 pass done. I've used that machine hundreds of times. Again, it's a phenomenal, great machine. And now many have adapted that same machine, included a UV device with it, and have made their own EBU with it, right? They get the peristaltic pump, they've got the 10 pass Zotzman or even Hermann machines, and then they attach, usually it's the hemolumin device because O3 UV has their own EBU. But Robert Rowan has done this. There's the Malaysian, Ibu device that also attaches to it. So there's a lot of, we call it Frankenstein over here. It's a affectionate way of making fun of it, but it's effective. So the machine works really well. The high dose at O3 UV, it draws out 300 mils of blood at one time, but we also did all the research to show it doesn't have to be a 1-to-1 ratio of blood to ozone. So you can do 300 mils of blood and 1,000 mils of ozone. Lexi's has got this. I know several of you do too. And you can go way above that. You can get to like 1-to-4, and it does not lyse cells. There's no damage to it. It appears we've done tens of thousands of them now, probably pushing 100,000 of these high dose therapies. And so it's very safe, effective. Again, it's not under pressure, and it's still one bolus, and you can still of both blood and gas. And you can, but it's automated. So it draws the blood for you. It infuses the heparin for you. And automation is part of what the Zotzman machine has. Again, the quality of Zotzman is so great. One of the challenges is they're an international company. They're a European company. So getting their materials in their tubing has at times proven to be difficult. Getting support has been difficult. At times, I recently reached out to them actually and did not get a response. So there's those types of nuances that you have. There's no real training on it from the company in the country that I know of, but there's gobs of providers that are using them, again, adapting it to other types of MAH and UV and EBU procedures, and love them. Again, very high quality. They're great. So the high dose from the O3 UV company is meant to reach that same level. So it only does 70,000 micrograms of ozone, but in combo with the synergy of UV light, gets the same outcome really. So, and it's interesting talking to the O3, so I used to say O3 UV, the O3 movie, a filmmaker, Luciano, when he's in Spain, Brazil. Ooh, I wanted to announce that Brazil just officially accepted ozone in their standard of care. It is conventional medicine in Brazil now, which is super cool. So putting standard of care together, which is protocols, following them, proving safety, proving efficacy, there is value to that might substantiate what we do, although we can't all be doing all of our own things if we're going to, go down that road. But anyway, he's talked to providers all over the place, and in other countries, they feel like a 10 pass is, in some of the other countries, right? It's European, but in the South American countries, for example, Russia feels the same way. It's too much ozone. But you can regulate that with that device. So anyway, there's lots to know there. We don't train a ton on it, but we definitely can help you get going. If you inherited the device, it's fantastic. You'll just maybe have to go through those logistics of getting all the materials. And again, if there's anybody on here who has any other opinions on it, I know a lot of you have a 10 pass and use it. And you can read lots and lots and lots of material online about how great and effective it's been.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for all that information. And
Yeah.
if anyone does have any information on reliable supplier, how to get that material, and if they've used it, I would greatly appreciate it, since we have it, and I know it was an investment that my father made. And so yeah, thank you for all that.
Sure. Yeah, and the materials are important. That's why I reached out to them. I was looking to get supplies for people. And again, I even have some connections. I know people are getting them. I just haven't heard back from them yet. So that would be great. Lexi, your question's great. Adding procaine into the ozone bag? That was asked the last week with Suzanne. She said yes. She said you could put the procaine right in there. I think the theory there has to be held strong that the ozone is not going to oxidize any procaine because it's already bound with the blood. And then essentially that's all going back to your body. There's nothing there that's going to break it down, etc. I think that's doable. I personally have not done that. I've always done the push or the separate bag of procaine afterward is how I've done it. But she did say that it could be done. Courtney, it'd be interesting, or you'd be interested in the malpractice coverage as well. Okay, and just change to Kinsale. I don't think that is one of the companies I have. That's good to know. Yeah, Lexi, are you willing to give your malpractice company? If not, that's okay too. I can pull these up if you want to wait for me just a second. I can pull up, actually it's right here because I open it nonstop. The companies I have are, well, I have a couple names, Mike MacArthur and Mike Carson. They work for the same company, proassurance.com. Put that in the text. And then Baxter is another one. Pro liability is another one, and CM and F. Gallagher. Okay. I think that's always a kind of a rotating question just because sometimes they drop you if you want to bring things on. I know also it's how you state it, like we were talking about earlier, and some people like to toe the line. They want to tell their malpractice every detail of what they're doing and make sure it's covered. And other providers get coverage because they leave things very vague. So keep that in mind too. Somebody who might say, oh yeah, they've covered everything I do, they may not be divulging everything at the same time. So, okay. All right, I think you guys can all see those. Any other questions coming to mind? Ozone questions, Procaine questions. I had a couple of Procaine questions come in that are in response. If you haven't heard Suzanne's presentation last week, it was so good. She's always so good. And then our Q&A time was really effective, I felt as well. But if you go to MedMasters on YouTube, it'll pull up right there because it was our last one. And so you can listen to it there. She also has her training at her office. I assume she still has spots left. I know she sold a couple last week. And she was looking at bringing on another date in February or March. I haven't heard from her if she got that up and running yet, but, she is at vinemedical.com. And you can Google her as well. We had the link last week. We still have it. I think it's also posted in that YouTube video. So it's great education. And then we added the Procaine bundle to it. So I also did a presentation, kind of merged from a lot of different, I did a presentation. No, you guys did a presentation when we presented at Lexi's office in May. So there's lots of materials. I felt like it went really well. Some of the things I presented and talked about, she didn't, and vice versa. So if you stack her presentation and my presentation, we had the question, is this enough to get started? Yes, at least in terms of Procaine IVs. When it comes to neural therapy, the stellate, et cetera, like Lexi was just talking about, please go to a training. I know Lexi's probably open to having people shadow her as well. She's got her own training academy, UDirect training academy. So that is November 1st and 2nd with Suzanne. Oh, you can't see everyone else's comments. Well, let me go to settings again. Attendings can chat with everyone. See if that works. Yeah, you need hands-on with that stuff. Anatomy is a really big deal. That's, and some of it's super simple. Not all of it is like the stellate. But anyway, get training there. Our Procaine bundle, though, it's got both lectures in there, and then it's got just the IV portion. Again, there's no neural therapy advice or presentations. There's a little bit on kind of what neural therapy is, but there's no direction there. It's all in the IV world. But protocols, your SOP, I've had for years, handouts, patient education stuff for Procaine, what to expect. That's in our Procaine bundle. If you go to MedMasters store, you'll find that. It was also connected to your invite for this today. So I had the question, is that enough to get started? It is, in my opinion, with IVs, but please go do hands-on training with Suzanne. Or she said there's a couple other coming up too. And Lexi, I'm sure, is willing to coach you through that also. Procaine, yeah, Alan is fantastic. Again, go watch all these presentations so we don't rehash it here, but it does very different things than ozone. Ozone, though, is always going to stimulate circulation. It's always going to stimulate immune balance and inflammatory balance. And so they do pair well together in many ways. I think any IV can pair well with ozone because of that hypercirculatory response. UV does the same thing. So if you got both of those in combo, I can't remember. Somebody asked the question to Suzanne if she did Procaine first and then ozone UV, or if she did ozone first and then Procaine. I can't remember what she said. I always do ozone first for that reason. The second reason is if you're drawing any blood, it's going to be easier to draw blood before you infuse anything than waiting till afterward. Yeah, and Procaine first because of bicarb. Okay, there's a factor there. I don't generally, I haven't added a ton of bicarb to the IVs. I didn't do it with neural therapy either. I like what she said though, just that buffer, it stings a lot less, and some other therapeutic benefits to adding the bicarb also. So if you're using the bicarb, Lexi says do that first. Yeah, I could see how the Procaine would make ozone work better as well. Like I say, these are great insights and great things to try in your practice and see what works best for your patients. But she did do a great presentation there. All right, so she also gave dosages. Also in my presentation, there's also links to research and protocols all the way back from Anna Aslan's research in Romania. So there's lots there in terms of what the dose should be based on the weight of the patient. So all of that's in there. I really think that you can get going on IVs with both presentations and then all the materials that we provide. Lexi's got some stuff too. Presentations. So Suzanne's is on our YouTube channel. It's going to pop up first because it's our last one. It literally says how to boost your IV room with Procaine or something like that. Suzanne Fury is her last name, Ferree. And then the other you purchase in our Procaine bundle at our MedMasters store. And always feel free to email us, Alan, if you want to. You can email me at kim@medmasters.org or trainer@medmasters.org. All right, any other questions? You guys want to raise your hands, speak about anything? Lexi had some really great advice on marketing. I think that's true with anything that you do. I was going to get into some marketing too. Oh, I wanted to share my EBU story. You guys are going to love this. So we have about 170 O3UV EBU devices placed. I'm learning so much more as I'm able to now expand beyond O3UV and all the other devices. It's about double with the rest of the industry. So there's, let's say, about 300 or so active, very active EBU procedures and devices happening throughout the country, and many other countries too, some international as well, that are out there. And I helped host a two-phase study a couple years ago on EBU, learning how people are taking like the 10 pass and putting it with the hemolumen, and there's all these devices out there. Malaysia's now on their third or fourth rendition. I can't divulge what they are bringing to the table, but it's going to be really amazing. Getting supplies is becoming easier and less expensive. So EBUs are a really phenomenal thing. And there's even a couple companies submitting for some approach towards FDA approval. That's a long process. There's many steps to it. But they're working on it. So I need to focus so I can find this story. Maybe it's right here. So we have all these EBU providers, and we love feedback. And she was so excited to share this. So this is from Natalie Crodell in Arkansas. She gave me permission to share this and share her name. But this is a female diagnosed with breast cancer. I didn't know any of the details to that breast cancer, except that she says her chest was eaten off by cancer. But I did get to see and witness, I'm going to read to you the PET scan. So this is after 4 EBU treatments, no chemo, a little bit of high-dose C and some apricot seeds, B17 if you're familiar with that, but no injectable B17. These were like she was consuming it. So the PET scan says there has been interval improvement in skin thickening and the mass-like area within the left breast. Previously measured at 4.2 centimeters, now 3.0 centimeters. Maximum SUV of 5.1, previously 12.9. Bilateral axillary lymph nodes measuring up to 1.2 centimeters bilaterally. Irregular mass-like area in the left axillary tail region, previously measuring 2.2 centimeters, now measures 1.5. Axillary lymph nodes have a maximum SUV of 4.3, previously 5.8. Irregular mass has a maximum SUV of 1.9, previously 4.4. Kind of gives me chills. She wrote, her chest was eaten off by cancer. It is healing up. Her ribs are frayed from Mets to the bone, but she is able to walk a mile now. Off her fentanyl patch. She takes meds at night, half a Percocet, then maybe another half if she wakes up with pain. So if that doesn't say everything, I don't know what does, but very, very, very cool feedback there with a very minimal amount of treatment. So another reason to consider doing EBOO. EBOO is different than the other ozone and UV light if you choose procedures. I'm speaking to a provider in Canada, they're able to do, he's a naturopath, and then in their scope, they're able to do direct IV access or direct IV ozone. And he says, it's the same as you Americans doing the EBOO. It's just a slow drip. It's integrated into the blood, not at those large bolus, but at a slow continual drip. It's treating 2 liters of blood, not 300 mils, not 200 at a time. It's more like a dialysis as we describe it, but fantastic results there for this case. Of course, keep in mind again, we are not treating breast cancer with EBOO. Do not say that ever. You've got to really stay in your lane with this. The sense that she chose not to do chemo, or it was not an option maybe, you know, says a lot there too. So this particular patient obviously was open to other things or desperate to other things, maybe was, you know, left to her own life story. And so chose EBOO, but great, great case. It was so fun to hear that. Thanks for sharing that, YouTube. All right. Does anybody else have anything to share in terms of EBOO? Topics, results, protocols. I will also say this again. I did this whole thing on standard of care. EBOO is one of these things. I gave a presentation on this because we were able to interview over 50 EBOO providers 2 years, almost 3 years after this has really been launched, and learned that the best results, Courtney's one of them here, the best results that we're getting with EBOO are not with EBOO only. There's some adverse events that have been able to be identified, just low blood sugar, low blood pressure, and then there's a rare, very rare female event that's happening. But the clinics who have not seen any of that are the clinics that do it properly. So not just EBOO, but it is with hydration, with nutrition, balancing antioxidants, using methylene blue, and also proper laying proper expectations for the patient. So I created a ton of these materials to help do that for you. I've written out what all these protocols are. And week 1, week 2, treatment 1, treatment 2, dosages, concentrations. Again, I think it's worthy of the effort to create a higher standard that's going to yield better outcomes and lower the amount of adverse events that we get. Some of these cases have gone to the emergency rooms. They've had to have imaging done. And that type of awareness by the outside world, as Lexi was talking about earlier, it can come with its repercussions. Our motto here is protect the patient, protect the provider, and protect the medicine. So I put together these EBOO it's stacking bundle, we called it, but it's the patient education. So what is EBOO? What to expect? How does ozone work? What is this procedure like? And how are you going to prepare for it? What is it going to feel like when you're going through it? And then what should you do when you're done having the procedure? How could this feel? Who are you going to contact? Again, really high level informed consents. All of these things make the procedure go better. Again, diminish the amount of adverse events. And again, adverse event is just classified as something that's not expected. So it doesn't mean that it's awful or bad or hurting people, but it is scary in the moment, and you can avoid it with EBOO. EBOO tends to, all ozone therapies can drop blood sugar and drop blood pressure, but EBOO tends to be much more dramatic, and that might be leading to the idea that EBOO is more effective altogether with fewer of the therapies. So It happens a lot more with EBOO. It happens more dramatically and extremely with EBOO. If blood sugar gets too low with EBOO, it takes days to recover. And we've seen some pretty high level types of responses due to that hypoglycemia. So definitely want to include better protocols with your EBOO if you're doing EBOO, and encourage you to purchase those materials so that you can see and learn and develop and integrate really high level standard of care there for your EBOO clients. Deb York, I had a tumor shrink from straight ozone gas, no IV with doc change on CT. So you're talking about direct IV ozone, I think is what you're saying there. So no IV, straight ozone gas. Well, no IV would indicate you got to access a vein to do direct IV. So maybe yes. Okay. That's fantastic. Many of you may know, may not know, like part of the big reason I'm in this industry is because my mother-in-law was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 13 years ago. I just went and gave her some ozone in her nose and her ears because she's got a little bit of a cold. But there is no sign of pancreatic mass in her and hasn't been for 10 years. And she was given 3 to 6 months to live. So all these things are so profound. Again, proper expectations, play nicely with others in the industry, the field, their specialty, right? Oncology in this case. But it's motivating to hear these stories for sure. And also that we're not gonna be able to fix everybody. So again, proper expectations. All right. I did have some things on marketing if we want to get into it. It's already been an hour though, if you can believe it. Any other questions? I hope yes, the replay, we're recording it and the replay will be sent out if that's helpful to you. Just to those of you that are here or registered. Thanks so much for your input, you guys, Lexi, Alan. Do we want to get into marketing? Does anybody, again, it's 5:55. Lexi brought it up already. And just, if you weren't here in the beginning, just talked about, please be careful with the language that you use when you're publicly marketing. She does a ton of socials. I'm a big fan of email. And that's what I was going to talk about. I've had close to 10 consults this week with people just asking, how do I market this stuff? And there is some very fine print to marketing this in terms of the very specific language. Her recommendation, if you're doing like a stellate, is not to use the word block, but maybe infiltration. Those are very specific details. But I've had a lot on how do I get referral sources? How do I start with my current patient base? How do I handle those relationships with those referrals and so on? So just a few ideas I wanted to throw out. If you don't have referral sources, you might look into getting those. What does that look like? It could be a health coach in your area. It could be another provider here in my local area. I've been teaching a clinic, Procaine and other IVs. And we just had a plastic surgeon's office say that they would love to refer to us. They also have an urgent care that refers to us. We had to go in and do some lunch and learn. We had to invite them over to receive some IVs. I've trained, spoken with like some of these other providers. We even had an anesthesiologist there who had done stellates, early on in his career for regional pain syndrome. So he's very familiar, but had no idea how Procaine was used in neural therapy and as IVs. So inviting people in, walking them through that, maybe asking to go into their facilities to share, right? Lunch and learn means you're giving a small presentation, getting the whole staff on board. And getting them to recognize what it can do and then not stepping on their toes, right? Don't cross over, don't steal any of their patients. The other thing is also just start with your email list and your socials. And if you are not collecting emails from your patients, shame on you. Start today. I can't tell you how effective an email list can be, and socials can help you gain more emails, right? Call to action says, are you interested in this information? Are you watching it? Well, give us your email and we'll give you more information. Or engagement in socials is so important. So you want to be able to always tell your patient base, we've got something new and we're super excited to tell you about it. And again, be very careful with that language, but you have to be able to communicate with them in order to store up business, to keep people recurring, to get them back in your office. And no, Email is not dead. Yes, everybody's got a lot of stuff in their inboxes. If you want to do SMS or text messaging, that is now very, very affordable. You can do a lot of education and marketing through text, and some people prefer that. You may not. Don't do this based on what you think people want. I hate social media. Everybody knows that, but it's so effective. If you think other people aren't on social media because you don't like it, that is not a fair assessment. Don't cut yourself short there. Emails are the same way. Some people prefer emails. I prefer a text. I respond better that way because my inbox is very full. And then there's your socials, right? Which could be LinkedIn, it could be TikTok, it could be Instagram, Meta, Facebook, all of those, and just share information. Keep it high level, actually. Consumers are more educated than you think. They can handle more than, Lex even puts needles and blood and, all sorts of stuff on her socials in terms of sharing what she's doing and all the education and training and right, the innovation of medicine that's available, plus the research that's there. Keep it a little bit vague in terms of do not make any claims, right? But use these things to share information. Now, the other idea I just want to throw out to you is do an event like this. If you have emails and you have socials to be able to broadcast to your patients and any of their friends and family that they want to share it with, that you're doing a free educational webinar, Zoom, in spite of tonight, is actually pretty easy to run. You can just turn it on and hopefully the chat works. But offer people your free education and free advice, and then always have an into that says what's next, right? So we do offer so many therapies in our office. We have new therapies. We do treat these types of conditions, and we do it naturally. We do it regenerative wise. We do it, right? There's these terms that you can use, especially in a private webinar, and then put an offer out there, free consultations or 10% off our packages or those types of things that you can do, right? And it doesn't matter if there's only 2 people in your webinar, that's still 100% more people that you're talking to than if you were one-on-one in a consultation in your office, right? So it's always worth that time. I had a consult with a mutual friend of Lexi's and ours, Lexi's and mine yesterday. And she was really insecure about this. Like, I don't do videos. I don't really know how to talk about this. And she really was good. And she has a lot of information and genuine enthusiasm. I'm like, so if there's only one person there, 2 people there, it gives you practice, right? Do these things in front of the mirror, do them before you get on live, do it live and just put yourself out there because people will sense that enthusiasm and genuineness in you. And they're looking for alternatives. Ooh, I wanted to share one other detail. This is a little bit off the mark. But I work with 3 or 4 franchises. I sit on the board of 2 franchises, and one of them has 41 locations. And I was meeting with the owner the other day about many things, and I just asked him how business was going and what is the current trends. He had been to Bio Business Bash, he had been to these biohacking franchise conferences, and Vibe is the conference for Ava, vibe.com. He said, I've just reviewed all of our numbers for the last 6 months, and the number one selling, this is really interesting, the number one selling service, they have all IV rooms, they have cryotherapy, they've got red light therapy, they've got compression type things, they've got aesthetics, they've got all sorts of things. And he said the number one thing was red light therapy. That is the number one thing that they're selling. So I'm going to do a webinar next month on shiny gadgets for your IV space that make it better. But you definitely want to start educating on the things that you're doing, sharing that information because people want it. Franchises are selling to the general public. And that is what they're learning and what they want and what they're purchasing. So also to stay competitive, just realize that this is coming. That these franchises are going to start doing a lot of the things that you have access to and are doing, and they're going to keep you competitive. They're going to keep you on your toes, but you want to start informing your patients that you do these things right away. So think about holding an event like this, record it, post it to your socials, post it to your YouTube channel, because it will be viewed hundreds of times after that and can always be growing business. So just a little idea for you there. I like it, Courtney. Messy process is better than no process. As much as I hate social media and doing videos, I get the best response out of them. As awkward as I feel on camera, it's still productive. It's worth it. I'm telling you, people just like people. They like you to be genuine, especially as providers. And you can get better and better at it. You can get, you know, your lights, your camera, all the things eventually if you want to, but good stuff here. All right, you guys, I'm going to shut it down. Don't forget I've shared so much. Email us at info@MedMasters, trainer@medmasters.org. By the way, Kim, if you want any of the things I've talked about that we didn't share links with, but go to YouTube channel, you can see all that Procaine stuff. Medmasters.org. Up at the top is our store. Oh, I want to talk about COVID real quick, because how are we treating COVID? It's the new thing, right? It's COVID season now. And I was thinking about all these antiviral things that we've got. Methylene blue, Procaine actually has some antiviral properties. Ozone is so great. Keeping people well. It's the season, so use it in your marketing. And if you're not doing those things, methylene blue, Procaine, glutathione, ozone, we can help you. We can get you up and running so quickly. And we offer free consultations as well. So medmasters.org. Vine Medical, if you're interested in Suzanne's conference. AIVA, AIVA, that's the organization that's regulatory based for IV infusion specialists. That one's great. And also if you need any work on the EBU side, reach out to us. Lots of services we can provide there too. All right, you guys, we'll get another email from me. I've got a lot of events planned for next month, some on business, some on shiny objects, some with some case studies that we're going to be sharing throughout the month. So thanks for being here. Thanks for your input, especially Alan, Lexi. Thanks for all your help there. Sorry the chat wasn't working, but enjoy your evening, you guys, and we'll see you next week.